Good evening. Because according to growing palace rumors, Princess Anne had finally reached her limit with Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. And this time, she wasn't staying quiet. For years, Anne had been viewed as the monarchy's most disciplined royal, loyal, private, emotionally controlled, and fiercely protective of the institution built by her late mother, Queen Elizabeth II. Unlike other royals, Anne rarely participated in drama publicly, which was exactly why palace insiders were suddenly so alarmed. Because when Princess Anne finally spoke, people listened. Inside St. James's Palace, a confidential meeting had already gone badly. Very badly. Senior advisors sat around a long wooden table covered in briefing papers discussing the ongoing tensions surrounding Harry and Meghan's possible future interactions with the royal family. At the head of the table sat Anne, silent, watching, listening. Then one communications advisor cautiously suggested a possible soft reconciliation strategy involving limited future appearances by the Sussexes during major royal events. That's when Anne finally spoke. And according to one insider, the room instantly froze. They continue to manipulate public sympathy while demanding institutional loyalty, Anne reportedly said coldly. That contradiction cannot be ignored forever. Nobody interrupted her. Nobody even moved, because Anne almost never used language that direct regarding family matters. The advisor carefully responded. With respect, ma'am, some believe public unity may still be achievable. Anne's expression didn't change. Unity built on emotional pressure is not unity. The silence afterward became unbearable. And within hours, whispers about Anne's comments had begun spreading through royal circles. Thousands of miles away in California, Harry sat alone in his Montecito office, scrolling through headlines already beginning to appear online. Princess Anne furious? Royal crackdown coming? Palace division deepens. Harry rubbed his forehead tiredly. Another war. Another leak. Another public narrative spiraling beyond control. The door opened quietly behind him. Meghan entered carrying tea. Meghan Markle immediately noticed his expression. What happened? Harry showed her the screen silently. Meghan read the headline carefully, then sighed. So now Anne's the problem? Harry leaned back heavily. She's never trusted any of this. Meghan crossed her arms. Any of what? Harry hesitated. Public pressure, media strategy, interviews. Meghan's eyes narrowed slightly. You mean speaking honestly? Harry looked conflicted. That's not how Anne sees it. Meghan walked toward the window slowly. Of course not. There was frustration in her voice now. Because every time we defend ourselves, they call it manipulation. Harry remained silent. And Meghan noticed immediately. You think that too? Harry looked up quickly. No. But his hesitation lasted too long, and Meghan felt it. That tiny crack of uncertainty. The kind that grows dangerously over time. Back in London, Anne continued her duties publicly as if nothing had happened. That was her style. No emotional displays, no dramatic statements, no interviews, just work. Yet privately, concern inside the palace kept growing, because Anne's comments reflected something larger, a shift. For years, many senior royals avoided speaking directly about Harry and Meghan's accusations, interviews, documentaries, and public grievances. Silence had become strategy. But now some insiders feared that silence itself was becoming unsustainable, especially as public divisions deepened. Inside Buckingham Palace, King Charles III reviewed briefing documents while aides quietly debated next steps nearby. One advisor finally spoke carefully. Your Majesty, Anne's remarks are beginning to circulate internally. Charles sighed heavily. I assumed they would. The advisor hesitated. There are concerns her position may encourage others to speak more openly. Charles removed his glasses slowly. And what exactly is her position? Another pause. That the Sussexes use emotional narratives to pressure the institution publicly while avoiding responsibility privately. Charles looked tired instantly, because whether fair or unfair, he understood why Anne felt that way. Unlike many royals, Anne valued duty above emotion almost absolutely. Personal grievances were handled privately. Public service came first, always. That philosophy shaped her entire life. And from Anne's perspective, Harry and Meghan had violated that principle repeatedly. Still, Charles also understood something else. Harry wasn't merely a rebellious prince. He was his son, and that emotional reality complicated everything. Meanwhile, Anne arrived at a charity event in northern England where reporters immediately began shouting questions. Princess Anne, any comment on Prince Harry? Ma'am, is the family divided? Did you accuse the Sussexes of manipulation? Anne kept walking calmly, but just before entering the building, she paused briefly, and her response only intensified the storm. The public often sees emotion, she said evenly. What they rarely see is responsibility. Then she walked inside. That was it. No names, no direct accusations, but the message landed like an earthquake. Within minutes, headlines exploded globally. Princess Anne breaks silence. Royal Princess questions Harry and Meghan's responsibility. Palace civil war worsens. Inside royal media offices, panic erupted immediately. Because Anne's statement carried credibility, unlike almost anyone else in the family. She wasn't viewed as dramatic, or emotional, or political, which meant even subtle criticism from her carried enormous weight. In Montecito, Meghan stared at the television coverage in disbelief. She's implying we're irresponsible now? Harry looked emotionally drained. She's saying we weaponized emotion. Meghan laughed bitterly. Interesting, considering how silent they stayed while we were drowning. Harry stood slowly. Meg. No, Meghan interrupted. I'm tired of this. Her voice cracked slightly now. Every time someone in that institution criticizes us, it's treated as wisdom. But when we speak about our experience, suddenly we're manipulative. Harry walked closer carefully. She grew up differently. Meghan shook her head. That's not an excuse. Silence settled between them. Then Meghan asked quietly, Do you agree with her? Harry froze, because deep down, part of him understood Anne's perspective, even if he hated admitting it. Some interviews had gone too far. Some public disclosures had created damage impossible to reverse. But he also believed their pain was real, and that conflict inside him was becoming unbearable. Harry? He finally answered softly, I think everyone's hurt. Meghan stared at him. That's not the same answer. No, it wasn't. And both of them knew it. Later that evening, William met privately with Anne at Windsor. Prince William looked exhausted as he entered the room. Anne noticed immediately. You're not sleeping. William gave a faint smile. Neither are you. Anne gestured for him to sit. For several moments, neither spoke. Then William finally asked, Did you really say they manipulate public sympathy? Anne answered calmly, Yes. William exhaled slowly. You know that's everywhere now. I assumed it would be. William studied his aunt carefully. You don't usually intervene publicly. Anne looked toward the fireplace. That family situation stopped being private years ago. William said nothing, because again, she wasn't wrong. Anne folded her hands carefully. Harry confuses emotional honesty with institutional accountability. William frowned slightly. What does that mean? Anne looked directly at him now. It means pain does not erase consequences. Those words stayed in the air heavily because William understood them deeply, perhaps more deeply than anyone. He loved his brother once with absolute loyalty, but years of interviews, accusations, and public attacks had changed something between them permanently. William's voice lowered. Do you think there's any way back? Anne took longer to answer this time. Yes. William looked surprised, but not while public pressure remains their primary strategy. At Buckingham Palace, Charles received another wave of polling data and media summaries overnight. Public opinion was splitting further. Some praised Anne for defending the monarchy. Others accused the palace of quietly turning against Harry and Meghan. One headline disturbed Charles more than the others. Why is the palace still silent? Because that question was becoming increasingly dangerous. Silence had once protected the institution. Now it was starting to look like avoidance. Charles stood near the window overlooking the palace courtyard, deep in thought. Then Camilla entered quietly. Queen Camilla studied his expression carefully. Another difficult morning? Charles gave a tired laugh. When was the last easy one? Camilla approached slowly. Anne believes the silence is enabling the cycle. Charles nodded faintly. I know. And? Charles hesitated. If we start publicly responding to family grievances, where does it end? Camilla crossed her arms thoughtfully. That may no longer be your choice. The weight of those words settled heavily, because she might be right. The monarchy's greatest shield had always been controlled distance. But Harry and Meghan had changed the battlefield entirely. Now emotion itself had become public currency. And Anne clearly believed the palace was losing that battle by refusing to confront it directly. Meanwhile, Harry made a decision that shocked Meghan completely. I think I should call Anne. She stared at him. What? Harry rubbed his hands nervously. She deserves to hear from me directly. Meghan's expression tightened immediately. So she can lecture you? She's still my aunt, and she just accused us publicly. Harry sighed heavily. She didn't use our names. Meghan laughed sharply. Oh, come on. But Harry already looked emotionally distant now, conflicted, torn between loyalty to his wife and longing for some surviving connection to his family. Meghan noticed it instantly, and it scared her, because Anne represented something powerful in Harry's life. Duty, tradition, royal identity, the world he claimed he left behind, yet somehow could never fully escape. You think she respects me? Meghan asked quietly. Harry hesitated again. That hesitation hurt more than words. The call eventually happened late that night. Harry sat alone in darkness while the phone rang. Then Anne answered. Harry? Her voice remained calm, formal, controlled. Aunt Anne. Silence. Then Harry spoke first. I saw the headlines. I imagined you would. Harry swallowed hard. Did you really mean what you said? Anne answered without hesitation. Yes. The directness stunned him. You think we manipulated people? Anne's tone softened slightly. I think pain became performance far too often. Harry closed his eyes. That's unfair. Is it? The question hit him deeply. Anne continued carefully. You had legitimate hurt, Harry, but public exposure became your solution to every conflict. Harry's voice tightened emotionally. Because nobody listened privately, Anne paused, then quietly replied, Perhaps. But that still does not justify burning trust repeatedly. Harry looked devastated, because somewhere deep inside, he feared she might partly be right. And Anne sensed it. I do not believe you are cruel, she said more gently. I believe you are angry. There is a difference. Harry whispered. And Meghan? Another silence. Longer this time. Then Anne answered carefully. I think Meghan learned very quickly how powerful public sympathy can become. Harry's expression hardened immediately. She's not manipulative. Anne's voice remained steady. I did not say she was calculating. I said emotional narratives became strategic. Harry stood abruptly. So that's it? That's what everyone thinks of us? No, Anne replied quietly. That is what many fear. The call ended minutes later, but Harry remained standing motionless afterward, because for the first time, someone inside the royal family had finally said aloud what others only whispered privately. And now the silence surrounding the monarchy felt even louder than before, because nobody, not Charles, not William, not palace officials, moved to contradict Anne publicly. The silence after Harry's phone call with Princess Anne felt heavier than the conversation itself. Inside the Montecito mansion, every room suddenly seemed colder, still, uncertain. Prince Harry remained standing near the window long after the call ended, staring into the darkness beyond the glass as waves crashed faintly somewhere in the distance. Behind him, Meghan watched carefully. Meghan Markle already knew the conversation hadn't gone well. She could see it in his posture, the tension in his shoulders, the exhaustion in his eyes. What did she say? Meghan finally asked quietly. Harry didn't answer immediately, because repeating Anne's words aloud somehow made them more real, more damaging. Finally, he exhaled slowly. She thinks we turn pain into strategy. Meghan's face hardened instantly. Of course she does. Harry rubbed his forehead. She said people inside the institution believe we use emotional narratives to pressure the family publicly. Meghan crossed her arms tightly. And you defended us? Harry hesitated. That hesitation lasted only a second. But Meghan noticed, and in relationships already strained by years of pressure, 1 second could feel like betrayal. You hesitated. Harry turned quickly. No, But he stopped, because the truth was complicated, and Meghan could see it. You agree with her, she whispered. Harry shook his head immediately. It's not that simple. Meghan laughed bitterly. It becomes simple when your own family thinks I'm manipulating you. That's not what she said. It's exactly what she implied. Silence exploded between them, and suddenly the room no longer felt like home. It felt like a battlefield. Thousands of miles away, Buckingham Palace remained tense long after midnight. Lights still burned inside private offices as communications teams scrambled to contain the growing media storm. But the biggest problem wasn't what Anne had said. It was what happened afterward. Nothing. No denial. No correction. No palace statement distancing itself from Anne's comments. And that silence was becoming deafening. Inside a private drawing room, King Charles III sat reviewing headlines while senior aides watched nervously nearby. Public reaction? Charles asked tiredly. One advisor cleared his throat carefully. Mixed, Your Majesty. Charles looked up slowly. That bad? The advisor hesitated. Supporters of the Sussexes believe Anne confirmed long-standing hostility inside the family. And others? They believe Anne finally said what many royals were too afraid to say publicly. Charles leaned back heavily. There it was again. Division. Always division. The monarchy increasingly felt trapped between two realities: protecting the institution or protecting the family. And lately it seemed impossible to do both. Another aide stepped forward carefully. There's concern about Harry's response. Charles' expression shifted immediately. What response? We've heard he contacted Princess Anne directly. Charles closed his eyes briefly. Of course he did. Harry always moved emotionally first. That was both his strength and his greatest vulnerability. Meanwhile, at Windsor Castle, Anne sat alone in a quiet sitting room, with tea growing cold beside her untouched. She wasn't angry, not exactly, but she was tired. Tired of emotional chaos dominating public conversations about the monarchy. Tired of watching private grievances become global entertainment. Tired of seeing duty treated like cruelty. A knock interrupted her thoughts. Come in. The door opened slowly. Prince William entered looking deeply unsettled. Anne noticed immediately. You spoke with Harry? William nodded once. He called me after you. Anne raised an eyebrow slightly. And? William hesitated. He's spiraling. Anne sighed quietly. That word again, spiraling. Harry had been spiraling emotionally for years now. The interviews, the anger, the constant public searching for validation. Anne looked toward the fire. What did he want? William sat slowly. To know if the family secretly agrees with you. Anne's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. And what did you say? William paused for a long moment, then answered honestly. I didn't know how to answer, because he didn't. Part of William sympathized with Harry deeply, but another part, the wounded part, understood Anne completely. William leaned forward. You realize the silence after your comments makes people think the palace agrees with you. Anne remained calm. Perhaps some do. William looked up sharply. You're not helping. Anne finally turned toward him. No, William, I'm refusing to pretend the problem doesn't exist. That landed hard, because deep down, William knew something had shifted permanently inside the family. Years ago, conflict stayed private. Now it lived online forever, and every silence created new speculation. Back in California, Meghan stood alone outside beneath the cool night air, while Harry remained inside. Neither knew how to continue the earlier conversation, because the issue wasn't Anne anymore. It was trust. Meghan stared toward the ocean as painful thoughts flooded her mind. Maybe they never accepted her. Maybe they never intended to. Maybe every smile during those early royal years had hidden quiet judgment underneath. The thought burned. Harry eventually stepped outside carefully. Meg. She didn't turn. Do you know what hurts the most? Harry stayed silent. It's not Anne. Now she looked at him. It's that part of you thinks she might be right. Harry's face fell instantly. That's not fair, isn't it? The question echoed painfully. Harry moved closer. I believe what we went through was real. But Harry struggled visibly now. Sometimes I wonder if the way we handled it made everything worse. There it was, finally spoken aloud, and Meghan looked shattered by it. You regret defending us publicly? No, Harry said quickly, but I regret how much damage it caused. Meghan stepped backward emotionally. That damage already existed. Harry ran his hands through his hair in frustration. I know, but every interview, every documentary, every accusation, it just kept escalating. And what were we supposed to do? Meghan shot back. Stay silent while people destroyed us? Harry looked exhausted. I don't know anymore. That answer frightened both of them, because uncertainty had entered the foundation of everything they built together. The next morning, British newspapers exploded again. Prince Harry shaken after Anne call. Palace silence speaks volumes. Is Harry losing faith in the Sussex strategy? Inside media offices across London, commentators debated non-stop whether Anne had accidentally triggered the biggest royal crisis yet. Not public division, private doubt. Because if Harry himself was beginning to question their approach, everything changed. At Buckingham Palace, Charles read the headlines with growing concern. Not because of reputation, because of Harry. A father recognized emotional collapse when he saw it. Camilla entered quietly carrying fresh reports. Queen Camilla studied Charles carefully. You're worried. Charles nodded faintly. He sounds lost. Camilla sat beside him. He's been lost for years. Charles stared silently at the papers, then whispered something almost nobody expected from a king. I failed him. Camilla immediately looked at him. No. Yes, Charles said quietly. Somewhere along the way, I lost the ability to reach my own son. The sadness in his voice felt painfully genuine, because beneath the monarchy, beneath the titles, press wars, and institutional pressure, this was still a family collapsing in public view, and Charles felt powerless to stop it. Later that afternoon, an unexpected leak shook the palace even harder. A senior insider reportedly claimed Anne believed Harry had become emotionally dependent on public validation. The quote spread globally within minutes, and this time, Harry exploded. Inside the Montecito house, he slammed a newspaper onto the kitchen counter. This is insane. Meghan looked equally furious. They're trying to destroy us. Harry paced furiously now. No, this is Anne. This sounds exactly like her. Meghan folded her arms. So now what? Harry stopped moving. For the first time in a long time. He looked completely trapped. Between wife and family. Between anger and regret. Between identity and duty. I don't know, he admitted quietly. Meghan stared at him carefully, then asked the question she had feared most. If the palace called tomorrow and offered you a path back without me, would you take it? Harry looked stunned. What? You heard me. That's ridiculous. But would you? The silence that followed felt catastrophic, because Harry didn't answer immediately, and Meghan saw everything she needed to see in that hesitation. Not rejection, not betrayal, something worse. Confusion. Real confusion. Tears filled Meghan's eyes instantly. Oh my God. Harry stepped forward desperately. Meg, no. But she shook her head. You're already halfway back there emotionally. That's not true.